Welcome to this First Lutheran Church podcast, produced by First Lutheran Church in Janesville, Wisconsin. We are a congregation of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America who are seeking to embrace love's adventure together. In this Canoeing the Mountains podcast series, Jen Watson, our deacon intern, talks with me, Pastor Michael Miller, about Todd Bolsinger's book, Canoeing the Mountains. These brief conversations will introduce key themes of the book in preparation for an in-depth study starting later in fall 2023. We're glad you've joined us, and I hope to continue the conversation with you.
Hello, everyone. If you are joining us for part 2, welcome back. If you have not heard part 1 yet, we do have a recording out there that talks about the beginning of a book we will be reading in October, Canoeing the Mountains. I am here with Pastor Michael, and we're going to be diving a little deeper into this book, talking about transformational leadership and stewardship today. So welcome, Pastor Michael.
Thank you, Jen. It's good to be back with you.
Can you tell me the title of part 2? Because I really enjoy that title name.
So the second theme of this book by Todd Bolsinger, Canoeing the Mountains, is that no one is going to follow you off the map unless they trust you on the map.
And I really found that fascinating because for those who have already listened, this book is about the Lewis and Clark expedition mixed into uncharted territory and new ways to look at leadership. So if we were to look at part 2's title, what does that mean to you?
Well, thinking about the Lewis and Clark expedition, they had a map that they were working with of the United States and what they expected roughly to find as they crossed into territory that they hadn't explored yet. But as we mentioned last time, they followed the Missouri River up to its headwaters, and realized at that point that beyond that were more and higher Rocky Mountains for as far as they could see. So the reality was not the map that they had in mind. So at that point, they went off the map. They went into uncharted territory, and they had to discover their way. Mm-hmm. And so in a similar way, the church and much of our world at this point is at a place where what we've known, the map of the world as we've known it doesn't apply because so many things have changed and are continuing to change. And so in this moment, as we move forward as a church, the message coming out of this metaphor is that no one is going to follow you off the map unless they already trust you on the map.
And I'm glad you mentioned that word trust, because that comes up in this part 2 a lot. Trust and relationship as being huge key factors to what it means to be a true leader, is to have the trust, to have the relationships with the people that you shepherd in order for them to want to make some changes that we're going to ask of them in this new model of a missional church. Mm-hmm. So the one important thing I thought that Todd Bolsinger really mentioned was the stewardship. And if we're going to do any changing, we first have to say what we aren't willing to change. We have to look at those important factors within the church. What are the core values? Mm-hmm. Scripture, faith, traditions. That's what we kind of have to stick with, and that's what we're entrusted with as stewards of the church. So, I'm gonna kind of throw in here what First has been doing here already. I started my internship, for those of you that don't know, back at the very end of February, and I was introduced to some visionary goals that First Lutheran had here. And can you walk me through briefly a little bit of the process that got First Lutheran to this part? Because this didn't just happen overnight.
Right. So when I started as pastor in November of 2019, I had already been in conversation with Kevin Ford about some coaching to help me kind of see my way forward and to live into this new call in a way that would be as effective as possible. I hadn't been the head of a large staff like we have here at First Lutheran, so I wanted to make sure that I had support to do that well. And he told me about the visioning work that their organization also did. And it wasn't too many months after we got here that I contacted him about exploring that, because I could see the need to develop that. First Lutheran hadn't done that kind of work of thinking about where have we been and where do we need to move as we go forward. So the first thing that Kevin did with us was to ask this question: what's not going to change? We need to know what's not going to change so that as we move forward, we don't alter what's essential. Mm-hmm. And so we discern the core values of the congregation, the values that have been consistent over a period of time. This congregation began in 1852, so it's had a lot of time together to form a personality and a character, and the core values are an expression of that. And so he invited us to take the time to see what's at the heart of this congregation that makes it unique among Christian and even Lutheran congregations.
And I've really found that important for me to understand as I work through my call here, so that I know then how to follow your lead and how to help lead the congregation based on those very clear, very concise goals. I think when you walk into a church where they don't have those visionary goals, very obvious and clear and concise, that's sometimes where we can trip up and not be faithful in our walk, because we get kind of stuck. Mm-hmm. So knowing what you have read, and for those of you that don't know, I've also been reading alongside Pastor Michael from our part 2. Can you then speak to what Todd is saying in his book, Canoeing the Mountains, to what First is now doing through their journey as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the core values that we discerned as a congregation are that we're rooted in faith through grace, scripture, and sacrament in that Lutheran tradition, that we're a loving community that walks life's journey together, that we embrace the power of music and creativity to feed souls, that we're caring neighbors who step up to meet real needs, and that we are a work in progress. So those things kind of keep us rooted. And as I talked last time about my training in seminary, those core things of preaching and teaching the scriptures and caring for the community, those are things that are central. So as we go forward, the trust that's built by stewarding those things well, stewarding the scriptures by keeping the congregation rooted in that core story, and loving people well, and creating a strong and healthy organizational system so that the people of the congregation can trust that the leadership is functioning effectively with concern for them and for our community as a whole. When we do that well, Todd is saying, then when we have to move forward into unknown territory, there's bound to be mistakes, or not necessarily mistakes, but failures. You're going to try something and it's not going to work. But there's a trust that because of stewarding those things well, that the leadership is thoughtful and careful and working hard to be as effective as possible. So when we fail, that's more of a learning experience rather than time to blame people for not doing their job.
Right. And that trust is continuous as well then, that, like you said, this is being done with care. So hopefully, and there will be mistakes along the way, that's part of the learning process, that we continue to move forward and don't move back, mm-hmm. right? Don't go back to what's comfortable and what we know, because just because it worked then mm-hmm. doesn't mean it's going to work now for this context, for these people in this place today.
Right.
So
yeah, because that's the danger. You can stay stuck, caught in the middle where you want to do things the way you used to do them, but they're not working, but the new ways that you might try are unfamiliar and you're afraid of failing, and so you just stay stuck there. that's where embracing a sense of adventure becomes important.
So if there's one last thing you could leave us with for this part, what would it be?
Well, I think I'm encouraged as I read that section of the book that this congregation has been doing this well. The competence of leading on the map. Our staff, our leadership have been working together well. We're not perfect, but our communication is healthy and strong, and the congregation throughout the interim before I came and since I've been here has been developing good transparency as we make changes. The leadership has been really effective, and I'm, as I read through that section of the book, I'm just very grateful for who we are together and the ways that we have been learning and living together.
And I guess I would second that as someone coming into this space, monitoring it from the outside to kind of see how things worked. I would definitely agree that there are so many wonderful things happening here. Great leadership, trust, relationships. It's really and truly been a gift to be here. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Jen. It has been a joy. You've contributed much to our work together, and I'm so grateful for your internship.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So tune in for our next part coming up within the next week. Thanks so much.
Talk to you later. Thank you for listening to this podcast. First Lutheran Church is learning to become genuinely inclusive, thoroughly engaged, externally focused, and relationally centered as we seek to live intentionally like Christ in the world. Embrace the adventure with us. You can find out more about us on our website at flcj.org. We welcome your questions and comments, which can be shared through our contact page. We're also active on Facebook and Instagram.